I'm sold. You know what? I'm restoring back. It's gonna happen. My kids
Yeah,
are in school now all day long. I'm gonna wear my tugger. I'm
yeah.
coming back, like.
4, 3, 2, 1.
So today we have Norm Cohen. Norm is an intactivist. It's an activist to keep you intact. I mean, this guy has been a warrior for human rights, a warrior for children's rights, really. I mean, that's where it really comes down to. Norm is the executive director of NOCIRC of Michigan. He's also the founder of the INTACTivists Circle in 2014. You started that. And I actually recently watched the 2018 documentary, American Circumcision, and I saw you in that. And I was like, there's Norm. Look at that guy. It's awesome. So you're a warrior, buddy. You've been at this for years, haven't you?
Yes, I have 28 years. I'm proud to say. Yeah.
Wow, 28 years. That's a long time to be doing this fight. That's impressive. I'm what when did it all start for you? Like what was it that you were like, I got to jump into this and I've got to do something about this.
Well, I tell people it started when I got circumcised on the eighth day of life, but that's actually not precise because I thought circumcision was the gift of the Jews. I thought that this was healthier for me, and even if I wasn't religious, it was still a benefit to me. I was told in Sunday school that it prevented cervical cancer in women, and it
Yeah.
prevented penile cancer, and it prevented diseases. And this was in the 70s when there was a beginning debate about whether Americans should be practicing this or not. But I still naively picked up on all that, and I said, no, it's got to be better. They wouldn't do it because I knew, Christians, non-Jews did it, and I thought, well, there must be some medicine, some science behind it. But when I was 27 and I was planning on having a child with my then wife, I did come across some information, and it really shocked me. Just a mild encounter with some information, I was just totally blown away because I realized that yes, I had a scar on my penis. I in fact had a skin tag as well. And yes, the Jews did not invent circumcision. It was invented by the Egyptians, and it's over 6,000 years old. And Muslims practice it as well. And then just looking deeper into the mechanics of the anatomy of the penis, I realized that you can't cut something off and expect it to behave the same, right? Form follows function. There's
Yeah,
no
exactly.
to assume that if you cut something off the body, it's just going to be a-okay. This is healthy tissue. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a deformity. It's not a defect. And it's not a disease. So there's really no reason to be cutting it off. So I realized, I think a light bulb went off in my adult brain that this is absolute nonsense of what I was taught. And then I was angry. Spent a few years just being angry about it as well before I did, engage with the organizations, the grassroots organizations that were there. I had no intention of becoming a director of a nonprofit organization. That really wasn't in my career path.
That wasn't the plan.
No, not at all. And I was very apolitical. I was at UC Berkeley for my bachelor's degree. I was just completely disinterested in politics. I was not out to change the world. I was so much selfish and self-centered. I was just going to focus on me and make money, advance my career, get married, have children. I was focused on me, and maybe I wasn't ready yet to really appreciate what was going on. But by the time I was 27, I realized, somebody really ought to do something about this circumcision thing because it's a load of bull that I was taught, and it was not true. And I still felt like, well, it's not really for me. I'll send them some money. So I started donating some money to some of the national organizations, got on the mailing list, got more and more angry as the material and the propaganda that was continued to be spewed about how it was beneficial, and if it's not because of this reason, then this reason, and there came other excuses. And then I learned more about the history. And the more you learn about it, the angrier most people will get. If they understand the harm of circumcision, then they hear about propaganda still trying to promote it, and lies and misinformation,
Yeah.
deception and coercion to get the parents to do it. Felt like, wow, somebody really ought to work on this. So finally, one of the national organizations, they invited me to become a field organizer locally here in Michigan. I said, well, I don't have a lot of time. I was trying to start my own business as a computer consultant. And I thought, I guess I could give an hour a week on this. It might do me some good. So I, uh, I set up a table at the fairgrounds and handed out information. And I discovered how much I really loved it. I really loved talking to people, especially young people who hadn't yet had children, who were interested in the topic, who were maybe out of the mainstream, who were willing to be open-minded and consider all the impacts of sexuality on circumcision, consider the religious aspects, the historical aspects, and then change their minds. And so I saw in real time that, yeah, I really can prevent circumcisions by talking to people. Not everybody, but I could tell that even from the very first time I did a tabling event that I was changing minds and I was making a difference.
So for dads to be, for dads that are about to have a child, a boy, what advice would you give them? Like, should they do their research? Should they look into it? Who should they talk to? Like, what are your feelings on that?
Well, it's such an important decision, Jay, that fathers are faced with. Often the mother doesn't want it done, and I get calls from moms, and the father for some reason wants it done, maybe because he's circumcised, he thinks everybody is circumcised. So definitely, approaching it from a fact-based statement, that these are the facts, that circumcision rate is declining, that the majority of the world, 70%, are not circumcised, that he's not going to be the only boy in the locker room who is intact,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's fewer and fewer. I know in North America, in Michigan in particular, there's a lot fewer showers being taken in the gyms, as a group. They don't have group showers the way they did when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And, so there's a lot more privacy kind of and prohibition against nudity, even in same sex spaces. There's a lot less nudity. So nobody's probably going to even notice, so whatever experience that the father may have had as a teenager will be different than what his son will have. And I think hearing it from other men helped that, yes, we too were circumcised and we too now are able to grapple with that and with accept the damage that was done to us and move on, in some cases restore, but understand that circumcision doesn't define our entire being of who we are, and it doesn't make us any less men. But why not offer your boy more of his natural experience as the man that he's going to become? Remember, he's going to spend 80% of his life as an adult, not as just your child, right? He's going to grow
Mm-hmm.
up and he's going to have sex and he's going to want to have the full experience of life. And as fathers, we'd all like to have more for our children than what we ever had. So why not give it to them by just saying no to this practice that doesn't need to continue and is already in decline? Why not be one of the people who stood up and say enough is enough, or this won't continue in the next generation?
Yeah, I had a mentor that taught me about ancestral healing, and you don't pass down your pain. It's got to stop somewhere. And I think this is one of those situations where that happens. I know a lot of fathers were like, well, I want my child's penis to look like my penis. And I thought, well, that's a weird reason. That's a strange reason to get your child circumcised. And I actually had this argument. And for me, I was like, well, just restore your foreskin then. If you want it to look the same, then do that. So when they grow up, oh, your penises look the same. But it's better to heal yourself than to harm your child. I think it's
Absolutely. Yeah, and before the boy is born, it's all theoretical, right? Your first child, you don't really know what it's like to be a father. So it's all
Mhm.
hypothetical. And with pregnant moms, at least they have some experience, right? That there's a child inside of them. With men, I think we theorize, we imagine, we put into our minds, oh, this is going to be weird, if he sees my penis and his. But in reality, boys don't look exactly like their fathers, and they're different ages, and the penis is going to be completely different, a child's penis
Exactly.
from a man's penis. So if you're worried about feeling awkward, it's just part of the natural process, I think, of raising a child and teaching him a love for his body and his own unique features. He's not, again, going to look like you. He's going to look like himself. And so why not give him all the benefits of what he was born into this world with?
Yeah, like pubic hair. I mean, kids
Yeah,
don't have pubic hair, like
without
if
puberty.
my kid saw me naked, he'd see it hairy, like I got a hairy chest and hairy legs and everything, but you look different as an adult. And I mean, there's a point where you're not naked around your kid anymore, and by that time, they're not even thinking about it. They're not comparing themselves to you. I think it's a mentality that some men have when they have a kid, that they think like it's going to be weird if it doesn't look the same, or are they going to get worried about it? Kids don't care. They don't. They're not there. I think it's more of a parent issue than it is a kid issue. Do you talk to a lot of parents or parents to be about circumcision? Is that a topic you come up with all the time?
Yeah, usually, if it's in conflict, then they'll come back to me, that they are already have drawn the line one way or the other. And so now I'll try to disentangle that. There's a lot of power dynamics involved. The husband doesn't want to feel like he's inferior, that he has a damaged penis, or there's something wrong with him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the woman that he's chosen to be with for life, and now they're having a child. And so, sort of as a test, as he sees it, of his manhood, or whether he's good enough both to be a father and to be a husband, whether he's worthy or not. And if he equates his circumcision with somehow being unworthy, then we got a problem, because he's going to dig in his heels, and he's going to really want to fight you and defend the practice of circumcision, because he wants to feel that he's okay, that there's nothing wrong with his penis. And how dare we point that out, not only to him but to his wife, that perhaps he's not all the man he could have been,
Oh
right?
yeah, for sure. It's
Very
an ego
painful.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have the in-laws and the grandparents involved as well, whether they're religious or not. They want
Yeah.
to chime in and say, oh, well, granddad was done, and so you got to continue this tradition, and you can't change, you can't negate what we chose for you. The father, the parent's father can't say, oh, how dare you insult us by not continuing the tradition. And then in Jewish families or Muslim families, obviously it's even more pressure there to continue the tradition. They're all expecting and happily this newborn baby. And so everyone's got expectations, and they all tell him stories about what this boy is going to be like, but they've never really met him, so they don't know. But what they do know is they think that they can carve up his penis to the way they like it.
Yeah, well, it stops insanity. I heard that. It's a
Yeah,
cure for insanity and
yeah.
masturbation.
Allegedly, the insanity was cured. First, it was masturbation, and then, they thought, well, masturbation would lead to insanity, right?
Would lead to insanity. Yeah.
Yeah, then it was just insanity, and then it was venereal disease, and so on. So the excuses kept mounting up. It's very, embarrassing for many parents to see their little boy tugging on their foreskin, playing with their penis, or tugging on the foreskin that they were allowed to have. So in the 19th century, this was introduced in North America to prevent little boys from masturbating, from playing with their penis, because again they thought that would lead to all kinds of problems and trouble, and then promiscuity later. So they wanted to
Yeah.
cut this off. They understood, as we do, Jay, that the foreskin has this function sexually, and that it provides increased enjoyment for boys of all ages and men to touch themselves and to enjoy their bodies.
And I think that's one of the things that happens in the minds of parents, is they don't see their child as a sexual being because they're children,
Right.
and then, but the thing is, children grow up, and you want your adult child to have a sexually enjoyable life. And if, yeah, it's going to be weird to get through those years if they're masturbating and stuff, but at the same time, that's part of the deal. I mean, we're all sexual beings,
Right.
and we're going to grow up, and you want your child to have an enjoyable sexual life. And I think it's every human's right to be able to experience that.
Absolutely. That is their birthright as human beings. And when we talk about having children, I mean, how the hell did this happen in the first place, right? Happened
Yeah.
by sex. So who's kidding who? Nobody's not having sex and continuing the human race. That's what happens. And someday, the parents, they want to be grandparents. So of course they want their children to have sex and give them grandchildren.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't just stop it for childhood,
Yeah, and it's age appropriate as long as they're given their space and the respect and their dignity, not forced into anything, understanding that their body is theirs. And the
Hmm.
first way to do that, to teach boys about consent and about respecting other people's bodies, is to not harm the body of that child, right? To respect the limits, even as a parent, against his body. There's things that we just cannot do to his body. People understand this mostly about sexual molestation, but they should also see circumcision as kind of a molestation. That you're demonstrating that a stronger individual can harm another sexually and get what they want, by force. See,
Yeah.
that is not a good way to teach about consent. That is not a good way to teach about respecting women and respecting their partners.
That's a
It's
great point. Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah. We teach our kids, you can't hit somebody else. You can't hurt somebody else. You keep your hands to
right.
yourself, but then we can cut the end of your penis off. It doesn't add up. And I
Right.
think that it adds confusion to children, and they're like, well, especially when they figure it out, probably when they're teens. I watched a couple of videos of teenagers that were completely upset about it when they figured out what happened. And you could just see the hurt and the pain in their eyes when it's like, why would you do that to me? And it just, if you want to create a society of children that are understanding about consent and that are not violent and not angry, I mean, you have to start with yourself and your actions of how you're treating that child. It is lessons that we are learning, as a society.
The boy's first experience of his sexual organ should not be pain, right? His
No.
very first experience of what it is like to have a penis should not be excruciating pain.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely trauma that gets locked in through that. Yeah. And you can just see it through society that pain kind of resonates out, you know? So yeah, let's put a stop to that. Let's see if
Yeah.
we can maybe do some healing around the world.
Among civilized people is just not very common. And for the 30% of the world that does it, most of them are Muslims, right? They're doing it for religious reasons. If you're not of a religious bent, then there is no justification whatsoever. And if you are, I still urge you to consider that this is not a good way to respect God's creation, nature's way, that we have to have more respect for each other and for our children and not carry on old traditions just because they're a tradition.
I agree 100%. I just wanted to take a quick second here, and I wanted to jump in between the show. Isn't Norm great, first of all? And just wait, what comes up next is amazing. Norm's stories are fantastic. But I wanted to invite you to go to zendadmethod.com and check out what we have for you. You can go from frustrated to fantastic as a father. There's a course there that you can sign up for. You can get the Zen Dad Method book, the bedtime routine, and it helps dads be more intentional at bedtime and build on their communication. So I'm going to get you right back to hear what Norm has to say, because it is so interesting. It's so amazing. I think Norm is just an awesome guy. But if you stay to the end of the podcast, I'm going to tell you how to get that book for free. But check out zendadmethod.com, find out more information. Let's get back to Norm.
So yeah, I've given a lot of my income to this cause. I give a lot of my time. I focus my energies and my free time, on this issue, and I think about it a lot. I write about it. I talk about it, speak a course about it. We were protesting this weekend in several cities in Michigan. We toured with the Bloodstained Men. So that's
The bloodstained men. I didn't even know about the bloodstained men until maybe 2 weeks ago, when I started doing some more research into it. I went down a rabbit hole years ago when I first had my first son, And then again, now I got back into it and I saw these bloodstained men and I was like, these guys mean business. Like there's like something so profound about putting on a giant white suit, like a white jumper, and then having a blood-stained crotch as a symbol to be like, this is horrific, you know, like look at what's happening right now. We're chopping off the ends of penises for no reason whatsoever. And what a bold thing to do to get that message out. And I saw a picture of you on one of them, and you're standing in the middle there with the signs and everything. And I was like, that's Norm. I know Norm. I sent the picture to my buddy, and I was like, I gotta interview this guy. So yeah, they came to Michigan this last weekend, and you guys did some protests.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were at the Comerica ballpark there in downtown Detroit, protesting on Saturday and Sunday. We went to a couple suburbs as well. Earlier in the week, we're in the outstate in northern Michigan, western Michigan. So we go where we can. NOCIRC co-sponsored this event with the Bloodstained Men. You know, the blood stain is a powerful message. I mean, anybody willing to go out in public with a bloody crotch has got to be caring about something, right? They have to be overcoming their embarrassment. They got to be serious about something. It's obvious that people are going to notice, right? This is the ghost of the circumcised boy returning to haunt the public who are ignorant about the fact that circumcision damages the penis.
It definitely damages the penis. I tried to do my research as objectively as possible, and I was looking at both sides, and I looked into all the statistics. And in America, my statistics might be off a little bit, but you could always correct me. But 50% of men are circumcised in the States, but in Michigan, it's over 80%. Like
right, tragically, and I'm embarrassed to say, yeah, it's still 80% in Michigan. That has a lot to do with the historical nature of circumcision. John Harvey Kellogg, a great 19th century proponent of circumcision, was in Battle Creek, Michigan, and promoting it along with some other wacky ideas about children. He was one of the first experts to write a book on child upbringing, you know, and raising children, and circumcision was promoted in that book. It became a bestseller. But he was also very anti-sex. He was very puritanical in his beliefs and his attitudes towards pleasure and sex outside of reproduction.
Yeah, I read this one piece of information in the 19th century. Europe and the United States, they did circumcisions and female mutilation. They removed female parts to stop insanity, to treat insanity and masturbation. That was the treatment for insanity. And it's like, well, it seems so ridiculous now when you think about it, but the practices are still being done. And like you look back at medieval treatments that they used to try to cure people, and it's just like, now you look at it and you're just like, it's a ridiculous thing to even think that we did that as humans. But the fact that it's still being done is like, what is happening to society? Why aren't we looking at this objectively and just saying, okay, yeah, these were the traditions. But, you know, there was a time in history when religious people would stone people to death, you know, like that was a practice that we did. And we're like, wait a second, maybe we should rethink this. That doesn't seem like a great way to go about this. I think circumcision is one of those things. And I'm kind of looking forward to the time when everybody kind of goes, wait a second, maybe we should rethink this circumcision thing. And if somebody does want to get circumcised, at least let them make their own choice. Like, we're doing it to children. You were 8 days old. I don't even know when I was. I mean, I got circumcised when I was a baby. I don't know. I didn't get into the specifics with my mother or anything, but I did have the conversation with her. But we're not giving anybody the choice as a society. We're just taking it from them. You know, if you're an adult, you're 18 plus, whatever, you want to make that decision, all the power to you. But there's got to be some rights there.
You know, it's only a choice because a man can go to a doctor or parents can go to a doctor and say, cut off the foreskin of my son's penis, right? Or
Yeah.
cut off the foreskin of my penis. So only because a doctor, a professional is supposed to first do no harm, is willing to actually do that, and in many cases getting reimbursed by insurance, then it's a choice. It wouldn't be a choice if the doctor would kick you out of the office and say, you must be crazy.
Yeah.
People don't cut things off their bodies unless there's something wrong with them, right?
So do you think this is education for the doctors, or do you think it's education for everyone?
Well, I'm accusing the doctors of professional malpractice. I mean, and lack of ethics around this body modification, this cutting of children. They would say, I'll do it if the parents want it. Most doctors won't promote it for medical reasons. They might for religious acknowledgement, or they might because the parents say, well, you know, my family does circumcision, so they might do it for that reason. But it's
Mhm.
hard still to find a doctor who's really going to dig in their heels about medical reasons. And if they do, you know, I debate them and I can say, you know, and cite the studies, it's just not holding up.
Well, I got into some of the reasons. The most common, it's the most common surgery in America, circumcision. That blew my mind, first of all. But the medical reasons that they've given throughout the years was to reduce sexually transmitted infections, diseases, UTIs, cancer, HIV. That was a big one. They said that it was like the one I found was it was like a vaccine for HIV. It lowered HIV by 60%. And then when you really get into the science and the research into it, you dig in, you find that it's just a ridiculous study that they did. It wasn't really based around like long-term effects. There was just so many holes in the study, but they used it all over the place. You could find this study going on. It was done in Africa, and they circumcised so many men over 2 years. And there was so many things missing from that study. And it seems like they keep on finding a new reason for circumcision. And it doesn't seem to hold up. So they try to find something else, something else, something else. Am I correct in this?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, the money is put into reestablishing the status quo, affirming the status quo, not in studying the function of the foreskin. Why is it there? What does it do? What is the sexual response from a man who's intact versus a man that's circumcised? Instead, you know, they want to affirm what's already being done. So they go to Africa because the studies would never pass the institutional review boards here in the United States on human subjects. But in Africa, they can get away with talking truck drivers into free health care for a year and a half and giving them free condoms and free counseling, and then offering some of them a free circumcision. So it was somewhat coerced of these researchers to go to Africa to even do the study. A lot of the participants actually dropped out when they found out they weren't going to get circumcised. And had they stayed in the study, we might have actually found the reverse to be true, that having a foreskin was protective. In addition, the studies in Africa do nothing for women, right? So none of this was to protect women. You could circumcise all the boys, and still you would, as we do in North America, have problem with HIV, right? The
Mm-hmm.
United States has the highest rate of HIV in the Western world, and we have the majority of our adult males circumcised.
Circumcised.
It makes no sense demographically that somebody would even finance these studies, because all you have to do is look at the American population and see we have 3 times the HIV rate as the Scandinavian countries who do not circumcise. So
The research just makes no sense.
right, it was very biased from the start. It was biased by design. It had methodological flaws. The demographics indicated something different. They overpowered the study by recruiting more men than they needed to, so they could show a very small benefit. That 60% figure that's often thrown about and was even quoted in the New York Times as a virtual vaccine is absolute nonsense, because the absolute risk reduction is under 1.8%. So most of these men would never get HIV. It's just the 1.8% difference between the handful, about 50 men who got HIV and those who did not. It's very, very small in the total population of 3,000 that they were being circumcised, and the control group. So it's just crazy. I'm really wish that more researchers and epidemiologists would speak out and say, look, you got to do better studies than this.
It is just it is wild to me to think that that's where the research money is going, especially when there is no medical benefit to getting circumcised. The research that I've done, it seems like you would want your foreskin intact. Like it seems like I think nature got it right, and we're like getting in there, we're messing with it. And what I came across was there was I don't remember the exact place. Maybe it was I don't know. It was in Africa, but the circumcision of men and women was to make the women more feminine and to make the men more masculine. And there was some beliefs around being completely internalized by cutting off all the external parts of the woman. It made it more internal for the woman, and the man was completely exposed, made him more masculine. And to me, that kind of like it, in one way it made sense, but in another way, it was like, well, there's a little bit of yin yang in everybody too. You need that balance also. You don't have to be 100% masculine all the time. And I think that nature naturally did that to balance people out, so it made sense for a second, but then I'm like, wait, no. It seems so ridiculous to mess with the nature that way,
Right. We are the products of evolution, and evolution success is measured by reproductive success. So the evolution of our species had every reason to get the penis right,
It's true.
the vagina right, the vulva right, to make sure there weren't any flaws that would be so serious that would threaten the success of the species. So the foreskin is there for a reason, and we can go into that if you'd like. I can explain the three major functions.
Well, yeah. What are the three major functions of the foreskin? I'd love to dig into that.
So throughout life, the foreskin protects the head of the penis, right? It's the
Mhm.
sheath that the head or the glands of the penis lives in, much like our tongue lives inside of our mouth. So that's going to protect the sensitive head of the penis, keep it moist, keep out foreign matter by having that foreskin, which changes with temperature. There's actually muscle tissue in the sheath of foreskin that can can draw in the penis in times of cold or fear, can actually pull in on the penis there. It protects the head. Then there is a sexual function, both in the gliding motion of the foreskin that happens when the penis becomes erect and the foreskin is able to fold back and expose its its inner layer, so that it rolls, and that provides lubrication, either for a man individually or a man and a partner with any kind of insertive intercourse, like vaginal intercourse,
Yeah.
will provide a rolling motion that seals in the lubricant that the woman naturally generates. So it keeps it a smoother, more gentle, actually, intercourse. And that rolling motion of the foreskin rolls up inside her as well, kind of like a bearing that stimulates the walls of the vagina. As I said, keeps the lubricants in. And then his nerve endings in the foreskin, particularly towards the end of the foreskin, which we call the ridged band. These are kind of bands of highly innervated tissue there, what's called Meissner's corpuscles. And these are very specialized nerve endings that we only have in our sexual parts of our body that
Yeah.
are intended to pick up that level of deep sensation that makes intercourse and makes sex so pleasurable.
Now, so I'm gonna get into this a little bit more because I was circumcised, and I never really thought about it. I never really it was just everybody that I knew was circumcised. All my friends were, everybody looked the same, you know, in the gym shower, whatever. And it wasn't even a thought. And then when I had my firstborn and the question, are you going to circumcise? The question came up. And I started doing my research, and I talked to my midwives, I talked to a doctor, I even talked to my partner's uncle. Her uncle was religious Jewish faith, and he switched over to the Jewish faith and got circumcised when he was much older, I think in his 60s maybe. And he explained to me the whole Jewish side of it. And I was like, wait a second, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I got to the point where I got really frustrated with the fact that I was circumcised. And so I talked to one of my friends about it, and I couldn't believe it, because at the time he was like, oh, I got a tugger. And I was like, what do you mean you got a tugger? It's like, I've got a tugger, and I'm regrowing my foreskin. At the time I was looking this all up, my friend had a tugger on, and I was like, are you kidding me right now? And he's like, yeah. And he took it off and he showed me the tugger, and I'm like, what do you do with that thing? And he goes, I'm stretching the skin around my penis to grow my foreskin back. Yeah. And I was like, why, how, what are you talking about? So I went down that whole road, and I looked up TLC tuggers, and his name is Ron Lowe. And you probably know Ron. Yes. And so I wore this tugger for 2 years when I first had my son. And after you have a 2-year-old and you're wearing a tugger and they're jumping on you, and it's like, it's just not, at one point I was just like, I can't do it anymore. I'm going to die. Like something's going to get seriously damaged down here. And so I stopped, but it's like I grew back a 2-skin. So instead of having foreskin, I kind of have 2-skin. And then it just stopped. I was just like, I got busy and I just couldn't make the commitment anymore. But there was a clear difference in sexual function. For my whole life, like the skin on my penis was just tight. And I always wore condoms. And I remember buying the condoms that kind of ballooned out, so there was slide on them. And it acted like foreskin. But I mean, I had a partner, we were having kids. I didn't need condoms anymore. And then that's when I really realized the difference with not having foreskin, and then growing foreskin for those couple of years and getting some slide on the penis is like, whoa, this is better. This is better. Yes, it is. And it blew me away. And recently getting back into this, I'm like, oh, I wonder where that tugger is. And I dug it out and I found it, and I'm wearing it again. Wonderful. Good. You got to restore, right? Yeah. You got the other half to finish. Yes. I got the other half to finish. And it's weird because like you can take that break for a couple of years and just get back into it. You know, now my kids are at school and I got time, and you can restore again. Good. But yeah. I fully restored myself. Yes. You have, did you do that years ago? Yeah. Yeah, I sure did. It takes a long time, you know, it's 5 or 6 years of constant wearing the device, but yes. Yeah, well, I'm going to break it up into 2 years and we'll see how much longer I can go. But there are sexual advantages to having foreskin. Yeah, you've learned that firsthand. And I love the smile that you get when I say that. You're like, yes, there is, Jay. Yes, there is. Yeah, and you know, for a while, NOCIRC of Michigan, we sold the T-tape kit, which is another type of device. It was an earlier method of restoring using tape, using surgical tape. Yeah. You know, I chose not to focus full-time selling that, but any man listening might be interested. It's foreskin restoration, and they can Google that, or if you're interested in the device you mentioned, tlctugger.com out of Chicago, and Ron will be able to help you with that. Yeah, you know, there's tons of them. There's all sorts of devices out there. Yeah, it's a cottage industry now of people inventing new ways. And remember, this is completely under the radar of any kind of dermatologist or urologist or cosmetic surgeon. This is, you know, homegrown stuff that men were experimenting with way back. And I mean way back. The Jews didn't invent circumcision, but they did invent foreskin restoration. They did, eh? They're like, I
At
want
the
it
time,
back. Why'd you do that?
yeah, the fascinating story. At the time that they were participating in the Olympics, it had to be done in the nude. And in Greece, the men were not circumcised, they were intact, but the Jewish men were circumcised and they wanted to fit in. They didn't want to feel humiliated or embarrassed the fact that they were missing part of their penis. And in
Hmm.
addition, it was considered to be rather vulgar, to walk around with the head of your penis exposed like you had an erection. So they did use a stretching technique, a very primitive way of pulling forward and tying it forward with string to try and keep the foreskin forward. From this, we realized that there must have been a more mild form of circumcision that was going on. It couldn't have been cutting off the way they do today, where there is no loose skin whatsoever. But at that time, in ancient times, would have been very difficult surgically to remove that much skin. So,
Hmm.
in our understanding now, in the first century BC, they definitely had enough skin to pull forward. Then later, when the rabbis realized that the Jews were trying to pass as non-Jews, they actually changed the ritual so that there was a stripping of the membrane so that more skin was removed, and further back, the skin was removed so that the Jews could not tug forward anymore with the devices that they had to try
So
and cover the penis.
they changed it so they couldn't restore as easily.
Yeah, so by the second century AD, yeah, it became impossible for them, to pull forward and try and cover it, and tie a string around it and keep it forward. There just wasn't enough skin anymore, sadly. So we came up with devices like what you wore and what I wore in maybe the last 50 years or so, when men were becoming angry now about having been circumcised. They were just putting things in little pamphlets explaining how to do it. There was no
Mm.
internet, but there was cassette tapes and little pamphlets that would get mailed around. And then some
Yeah,
guy,
where there's a will, there's a way, right?
yeah. And so they'd go to Home Depot and they'd find PVC and all kinds of pipes to
And they
place
make it at
their
Home
skin on.
Depot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's totally homegrown, and your urologists want the ones who dared tried to sew on new tissue, and it just doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
So I would like to get some medical research involved with this, and so that we can learn more efficient ways of restoring.
I think that would be a great idea to actually get some doctors involved. They're like, what is the best way to do this, and start restoring the pain and the trauma. And I mean, it is genital mutilation. You're mutilating a penis. You're mutilating the vagina. I don't think that female mutilation, female circumcision is done in North America as much as it is in Africa. It still seems like a common practice over there, but I think the 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 way that society accepts it in North America for men, it's just like, meh, yeah, I'm circumcised, and it just kind of blows over everybody. But if it was a woman that got circumcised, and it would be like, whoa, what is happening here? We need to do something about it. And I think it's starting to become more accepted that men are upset about this. Like when I figured it out, I was upset about it. I was like, whoa, this sucks. This sucks. And when I restored it and I realized what I had lost, then I was like, oh, I'm really pissed off now, you know, because I can see why men would be so mad about this. And it's almost like men aren't allowed to be upset about these things. You weren't allowed to be emotional about these things for the longest time. Men weren't allowed to be emotional or upset about this stuff. Suck it up. You can't be pissed off about this. I'm pissed off about this. I'm not going to yell at people or anything. I'm not going to go back and find my doctor, but I mean, it's still a shitty thing that happened, you know?
Absolutely, and it's still happening to boys born today, in the US and in Canada even. So we have to keep fighting it. It's not that just that you and I were a victim, but that the victimology, it continues. It's still the victimization of these boys. It's continuing even right now, and that's why I
Yeah.
fight. If it was just old history, of 50, 60 years ago, I probably wouldn't be caring about it. But now, because it's still going on, I feel obligated and motivated, very much so as you do, to
Yeah.
stop.
Well, I'm super happy that I didn't circumcise my sons. I've got two boys, and I even talked to them about it not too long ago, maybe 6 months ago or something around there. And I explained to my son why my penis looks different than his. He asked, and I'm like, well, when I was little, I got the end of my penis cut off, and his face, he was just like, why would anybody do that? And it was just his initial reaction to the whole situation. He was shocked at 7 years old. He was just appalled by even the thought of it.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you, like, even when you don't know, when you don't have any of the research or the experience of life, just the thought of that idea can shock somebody at that age. It's a scary thing. Hey, I'm going to cut a piece of your body off. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. You know?
But you can see how then the racket has to be ratcheted up, where now they have to come up with more and more reasons to justify what otherwise they know would appear to be outrageous.
Well, of
The
course.
barbarity of it, has to find a reason, so that they're going to be ever more defensive, whether it's for religious reasons or custom or personal preference. They're going to dig in their heels when they hear you say mutilation or barbarity, and they're going to say, oh no, this is our tradition. This keeps us connected to our history, our culture, our religion, our custom, our aesthetics, and they're going to fight you back. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, to me, instead of fighting the system, I always try to make it obsolete. Like, I don't ever want it to get into an argument where it's just somebody's defensive and you're trying to convince them of that. How do we go about this so that it becomes an obsolete thing? Circumcision is no longer even a consideration. I know you've been fighting this for 28 years. Bloodstained crotch and all, with the picket signs. Is there a way that is it a law that we have to change? Is it what is it that you find most effective in this battle?
Well, there's a lot of people that are just innocently ignorant. They're not taking a stand one way or the other. They just don't know. So I try to go into every conversation with that as a starting point, is like, oh, they just don't know. Let me see if I can help educate them about it. And I do convince a lot of people. I mean, with every generation, we have another chance, right? With every
Oh yeah.
newborn, grows to adulthood and has their own children, we have our own choice to frame the explanation and the story and the information so they make the right choice. It's not like we're stuck with these old timers forever who are going to dig in their heels. They're going to die off. That generation dies off, and the new generation comes in, has a better understanding, a healthier understanding of the human body, of healthy sexuality, of personal autonomy and freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, that they're not going to want to do this to their children. So I'm most effective with young people, say like in the 15 to 25 demographic age group, very successful. On the other hand, there'll be some angry young women, angry old women or angry old men, 65 or so, that want to dig in and fight me every step of the way.
Yeah, I bet.
I say. So it's quite interesting, from one person to the next that stopped by our information table, how different the narrative can be. It's like you're in a different culture, a different planet.
Yeah.
The range of differences that are there. So I think that reaching the next generation, that's where you're going to find the obsolescence that you're looking for. Is they're going to say, look, that was my parents, my grandparents. That's just not necessary.
What's the most aggressive anybody's gotten with you about this at a table? Like, has anybody wanted to fight you over this stuff?
Well, thankfully, I mean, not physically, but there's a lot of yelling and screaming and, finger pointing. I get accused of anti-Semitism. I get accused of causing AIDS, for example.
Oh
Um,
my God.
and then there's just weirdness that people think that I'm intact and I'm just trying to, or I'm circumcised and I'm just trying to prevent other people from getting circumcised, as if it's such a good thing that only a few of us can have. I mean, it just,
Oh, you're tricking everybody.
they spin, yeah, they spin it. There must be some ulterior motive behind my caring about this, that they must see that it couldn't possibly be because simply I care about this barbaric ritual being performed on children. There must be some other ulterior motive. Either I'm trying to deny them the right to have circumcision just out of principle, or there's some other, motive, but there isn't. And, most of the world is not circumcised. So I am with the majority. That's when I get screamed at, I realize that I have the world to back me up. 70% of the men in the world are not circumcised. And
Yeah.
all the doctors in Europe and in Asia and in South America, they would say there's no reason to do this.
There's no reason to do it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It is, it's a wild thing to think of, and I think that all the benefits that you have with having foreskin, I mean, the facts are pretty clear. I really wanted to have an objective view on this, but I can't. I just can't. I mean, it's pretty clear to me that this is a thing that we don't need to be doing to children. It's not necessary. I don't think that the medical society is doing any good with this. And I think that if the medical society says, you know what, maybe we should just call it on this one. Maybe we can just say, yeah, we made some mistakes. Sorry about that, everybody. Is there like, would that, if they did that, would there be just tons of malpractice suits if they did that? Is that what they're worried about? They say, okay, yeah, you know what, circumcision was wrong. Would just every doctor get sued for circumcising?
Well, it's possible. In Canada, the Canadian Pediatric Society has already said there's no medical reason to do this. They were not going to recommend it. They weren't going to put a positive spin on it the way the Americans and the American Academy of Pediatrics put a positive on it and said that they were still net benefits. So I think, yes, in Canada, you're further along. The health service does not pay for circumcision in any of the provinces now, whereas our Medicaid system in the majority of states still pays for it. The doctors are members of trade associations, and yes, they are trying to watch their backs and make sure that they don't get sued and they can maximize their profits. Circumcision is a quick few $100s with not a lot of time spent, and they will do it. As I said, if the parents want it, they'll do it. They won't spend time with informed consent explaining the risks and the damage that's going to result. See, so they point it back to the parents, but no, the doctors need to be held accountable, and there will be lawsuits. And there have been a few, and I think there will be plenty more, especially when you're talking about surgery on a minor for no medical reason. That minor is going to grow up and be angry like you. When they turn 18, yes, they can sue. They have a statutes of limitations that will run out, but they can sue, and we could have a class action lawsuit, I think, in the next 10 years for this non-consensual genital modification that was done for no medical reason.
Yeah, I think that would be super impactful. And I think that it would really change the way that society kind of functions. I mean, you literally have a country of angry men, and most of them don't even understand why. I'm sure there's a lot of men that don't realize that they're missing a certain part of their sexuality, that they never had the opportunity to experience the sex that was their birthright, like literally it was their birthright taken from them. Right. And I spent decades studying sexual practices and Kundalini and Taoist practices and multi-orgasmic practices and all sorts of things. But to know that there was even higher levels of sensitivity and nerve endings that I don't even have, it's like, oh wow, I'm just completely missing that whole part of my body. It's like I was robbed of that. I was robbed of those experiences of pleasure, of my birthright sexuality pleasure. Right. It is crazy to think that we're going to continue that and pass that down to children. And changing that is probably going to have a huge effect on I mean, the mental health of society. Could you imagine that all these angry men that don't even realize that they're angry for this reason, that no longer is a problem, that no longer is an issue? Mental health, like everyone is sexually satisfied and everybody's penis feels great and nobody feels robbed, or they don't have this a traumatic epigenetic experience in their body that they don't remember, but it still has an effect on them. I mean, when you're a baby, you go through something traumatic like that, it's in your cells, it's in your body. You might not remember it like on a conscious level, but still there's something there that's traumatically affected you. You know,
yeah.
Take that experience away from all the children that would normally be circumcised. I think you get a happier society, a healthier society.
Absolutely, and happier women, as I should say as well, because it affects
Yeah.
intercourse with women. Complain a lot about painful intercourse, both young women and older women, that it's just too rough, it's too much banging on them. They just wanted to get over with. It's just not as pleasant for them. Whereas with a man with a foreskin, it's a much smoother gliding operation. That foreskin is rubbing up and down inside the walls of the vagina. The foreskin is holding the lubricants inside. The man is able to gauge his level of arousal a lot better because his nerve endings are so much more sensitive. So he's less likely for premature ejaculation, but he can also detect, when he's approaching climax much, much easier than what a man with a circumcised stick basically is able to do.
Yeah. It's, I think it would be better for the world. I think it would be better for the world if men were not circumcised.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, an anachronistic practice. We have a 19th century puritanical Victorian era practice projected here into the 21st century. We have such a better attitude about sex and a lot less shame about sex, a lot more information and facts about it, and yet we are still stuck with this practice that was invented by these anti-sex puritanical doctors here in North America that thought that sex was only for reproduction.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, it's not. It's
Obviously,
just
yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Obviously not. The population would be triple, it's crazy.
Yeah, and even the sex educators, I think, need to be educated about this. A lot of them are still ignorant or willfully ignorant about the function of the foreskin.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were 27 when you got into this. But you were upset before that. And you're the son of a rabbi.
Right. My father was a Reform rabbi. I was raised as a conservative Jew, basically, in a fully kosher home. I was given a lot of information and training on the liturgy and the prayers, but circumcision is so minor as far as the day-to-day practice of Judaism, right? I mean, how
Yeah.
often would I be invited to a bris, or it's just a rare event in all of the life cycle and the seasonal holidays that happen in Judaism. So I'm very confident that anybody can practice Judaism without cutting the penis of their boys. It's just not necessary. It is in many ways, if you look at it objectively, it's just a footnote to all the other things that Jews do to practice their religion. Now they may see it completely different because it is in the Genesis 17:11 in the Bible that says, God told Abraham, this will be a covenant. This will be the sign or the token of the covenant between you, the Jewish people, and God, that we are the chosen people, allegedly, to
Yeah.
carry out the commandments, and that the circumcision was in fact an agreement sealed by this third party, the son, Isaac, uh, to get circumcised. And so it's just kind of an odd way to establish a contract between two people is to cut off something from a third person.
Yeah. Okay. We got this contract. Let's cut his penis off. Like what?
Yeah,
I don't want no part of that contract. I want no part of that contract.
yeah.
So you don't feel that to be a practicing Jew, you need to get circumcised.
Well, no, I don't feel, but they're going to have their side of the argument, and I'm just trying to air that
Of
side
course.
to say that they see it as fundamental. But if you look at it objectively, I mean, what are you really accomplishing? the boy at the time doesn't realize he's undergoing any kind of religious experience. It's just painful and traumatic, right?
Yeah.
And he's lost part of his penis, but what has he gained spiritually? Really nothing. Now when he grows up, they're going to say, well, you see, we did this because you're a Jew. This is a sign that you're a Jew. Well, how often does he walk around naked in the synagogue, right? If he goes to get a bar mitzvah, the rabbi isn't going to say, well, I have to see whether you're circumcised or not, so drop your pants, right?
Mm.
So religion, and any modern religion, is in the minds of the believer, right? So it's not really what parts you cut off or what do you do to your body. This is the only religious ritual in the Western world that requires cutting off something from somebody else's body. There are scarification practices, but again, those are done initiation rites as much later in a boy's life, and to say that somehow the circumcision is some magic that happens to a Jewish boy to make him Jewish, that's not true. And by Jewish law, it's the mother. If the mother is Jewish, then the son is Jewish, whether or not he's circumcised. Any rabbi will agree with me on that. Now they'll still say, well, it's still a very important sign of the covenant, of the agreement. But again, why inflict it then on the child? Why not sign up as an adult, say, I'm going to get circumcised as a sign of a commitment to the Jewish faith? And ultimately, I think that's what it's going to become. It's going to have to be advanced into the teen years so that boys can actually choose this. Otherwise, they too are going to get sued by angry Jewish boys having been cut.
For sure. There's going to be a lot of, there's a lot of family conflict there just waiting to happen. Yeah. Was it a huge conflict in I'm assuming it was a huge conflict in your family.
Yeah, I mean, I am not religious. I turned away from Judaism a long time ago, and it was not to my mind, an important part of my life. So, we had plenty of other things about, Judaism that we disagreed on. But again, I'm sincere in this, saying that if you want to continue Judaism, it's fine, but circumcision is not essential to that. When you look at the amount of commitment of daily prayers and weekly observances and observing the holidays, it has nothing to do with circumcision.
It happens a lot for Christians. They just decided to take this practice and add it to their religion. They're like, hey, that looks like a good idea. It doesn't seem like it was a good choice for Christians to jump on that bandwagon.
Well, officially they didn't. I mean, Paul said, in the book of Acts, that circumcision availeth nothing, that he knew, and he was, I think, smart about this. He wanted converts from outside of the Jewish community. So he knew if he made men get circumcised, he would get a lot fewer converts. So he did away with the old law, including circumcision. And he said that even the Jews had trouble continuing that practice. So I think that there were already a lot of
they already knew
to it. Yeah. So Christianity officially says, no, you do not have to circumcise. I want to make that clear. The New Testament over and over again in the letters from Paul does say, don't circumcise. If you are circumcised, you can be a Christian. And if you're not circumcised, you can be a Christian. So that circumcision is part of the old law. The new law is the sacrifice of Jesus. He was the last sacrifice. And that redeemed people who accepted him from having to do things like circumcision. Unfortunately,
so Jesus was the last one to get cut. Nobody needed to do it after that.
As a Christian, yeah, if you're a Christian, right? Jesus was born Jewish and circumcised. Paul, the rabbi, circumcised. But the point is that the world was rapidly expanding, and the ability to spread the faith was growing. Christianity innovated in some ways by saying you do not have to be of the same ethnicity, the same peoplehood to join our faith. Greek or Jew or Roman could join the faith. And that's one of the reasons that they grew. So because though that they took the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, they took it as one of their set of holy books. Unfortunately, circumcision is still read even to this day in the Christian churches. They read about it and they realize that that's the same God, who commanded Abraham to circumcise, is the same God, that became the Christian God. So it is a little bit tricky to try and explain to Christians that, well, God wasn't intending that for you.
Yeah.
Just ignore that.
But even there was an evolution of the circumcision from that. I think the original circumcision was just a little bit of the penis, and then it evolved
Right.
to more of it. Like you already stated that. So it's like even society back then took it upon itself to be like, nah, that's not enough foreskin for us. Let's take more off. And it kind of got out of hand, like literally, and it just needs a little switch for sure. I cannot support this enough. I cannot support this enough that this needs to stop. I think that it would just completely help heal so many things in society if circumcision was stopped.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%. There are so many different groups I've looked up. There's the Bay Area INTACTivists. There's Bloodstained Men, which we already talked about. Cockfight, which I thought was fun. Doctors Opposing Circumcision, Genital Autonomy America, NOCIRC of Michigan. That's you. Fantastic. Peaceful Parenting, Saving Our Sons, Your Whole Baby. There are so many groups out there that are fighting against this, and you've brought them all together in the one group, the INTACTivist circle.
Well, no, I can't say that I did that. I was hoping that we would be able to work better together as grassroots organizations.
Is that what you're working towards, bringing everybody together to be one mega INTACTivist group?
Well, with any activist cause or movement, there's different approaches and there's different demographics that are being garnered to support. So I don't necessarily see that as all that important. We'd like to work more closely together because we have such limited resources to be able to pull our resources. But I don't think the public really cares. I think the message is what is important, not the brand. I think it's very important that we just are effective in getting that information out there. Whatever organization they happen to find is great.
Yeah.
I have here in Michigan, we do tabling events. So I enjoy talking to the public, and we do a lot of handouts at public fairs and professional conferences. We'll hand out information. There's other groups that focus more on either the religious aspect or the legal aspect, or other subgroups within the larger American community. So we could go more into the dynamics, but it takes all voices to change the world and to reach people. We're all just doing what we can.
Yeah. So I guess the ultimate goal, what do you think the ultimate goal here is to what is your ultimate goal?
Well, I don't think the legal passing a law is really going to be the right strategy, even though assault and battery is already against the law, right? Cutting things off people's bodies is already against it. If it wasn't shielded by the aura of medicine and the excuses around medicine, I mean, the doctors would already be committing battery on these little boys. No, I think education is the best way to get it out to the public, to educate the innocently ignorant, as I refer to them as, those who are more entrenched in this and are not going to just give way because of the information provided. Then I think a combination of lawsuits and shaming will do the trick. I think that it's going to be quite difficult to defend this position of being allowed to cut off something from your child when that child is going to spend 80% of their lives as adults, right? This is a choice that parents should not be allowed to make. And any video you've seen of a circumcision is pretty awful. So I just don't think that they will find any kind of pride or any kind of ability to defend what they're doing effectively. And this is actually how foot binding ended after a millennium of practice. The Chinese, at the turn of the 20th century, they gave it up in a couple of decades, 2-3 decades. They gave up the practice of binding the little girls' feet because they were now encountering Westerners who were just horrified and shocked at what they were doing, and realized that the Western girls never experienced this kind of damage and trauma. And they realized that this was no longer a proud feature of their culture, but is a source of shame.
Can you explain foot binding?
Yeah, foot binding was this bizarre practice that began among the aristocracy and the upper classes, royalty in imperial China. And in the Forbidden City, and all of the princesses were raised, and they were very controlled. There was a great concern about any kind of sexual liaison, outside of the marriage. So one of the things they could do is literally limit the mobility of these girls by binding the feet with I don't know, cloths that would prevent the growth of the child's feet. And there were special shoes and devices that were worn to keep the toes from actually growing out. They would grow in, they would curl in on each other. It was really quite grotesque
Oh, wow.
distortion that was happening to the little girls. So the feet would be a third of the size or a quarter of the size of what a normal adult woman's foot would have looked like.
So
So they
they
could
couldn't
barely
run away.
walk. They could barely walk, and in constant pain. But at some point, it became a fetish where this was actually a sign of beauty. That this, among the men that would court these girls, it was a sign of beauty actually to have
Oh,
this.
wow.
It's really hard for us to understand that. And then it caught on even among the middle class women who didn't have to work the way the lower class women had to. It caught on among them as well. So the combination of opening to the West and then later the dictatorships under the communists, they wiped it out completely, said, we will not do this. And this is a shameful history and tradition. Even though it was 1,000 years old, they were able to give it up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they
And
were,
you know what? I hope that happens with circumcision.
yeah, shame too is part of the human experience, and it has to be a motivating factor here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you look back at something like that in history, and you have to think, it seems crazy to be doing stuff like that. And I think we're coming to a precipice where that's going to be the thoughts around circumcision. And I thank you so much for all the work you've done for decades now to bring this message out to the public. It is just a battle that I'm so glad there are people out there fighting. And I love that I can be a part of it and help and spread the word and spread the message, because it's got to end. It's got to end.
Absolutely. I do want to mention about intact care for our
Yeah.
fathers out there, or fathers to be. Make sure that the child's foreskin is never forcibly retracted. Okay,
Oh
because
yeah. I asked my doctor about that not too long ago. I'm like, he's 7. How does this work? I don't have foreskin, so I don't know. And I had a conversation about that. And you just leave it. You don't have to pull it down.
leave it
It's not a
alone.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's this obsession that they think that the child, there's some dirt under there they have to clean, and they end up pulling and tearing the skin, the common layer between the foreskin and the head of the penis, and it's extremely painful, and it can cause infection and other problems. So don't let the doctor do that. Just discuss the intact care procedure first, and there's pamphlets available from the American Academy of Pediatrics about this as well, and from, of course, my organization. Is never forcibly retracted. Just clean what is seen. That is, clean the outside, like a finger, like you'd wash your finger. That's all you're
Yeah.
going to do is pull on that forward, never pull it backwards. The boy's going to figure it out himself. And when he reaches that age, when it does become retractable, whether that's 7 or 10 or 15 or 18, then yes, he can be taught, to let the water stream under on the head of the penis, just gently, no harsh soap, so that it doesn't cause any kind of rash or irritation there, and then just gently pull it back.
Yeah. Now, what happens when you do restore? Does the head of the penis become more sensitive? Does it kind of like retrograde back to its original penis form?
Well, you don't get any nerve endings back. That's one thing, is those nerve endings are
Damn it.
gone. You
Damn
know,
it.
especially the specialized ones. But yes, because the head of the penis is now covered most of the time, the skin will thin out. And my skin actually peeled. It looked like a sunburn. It peeled several layers away so that I have a much shinier head of penis, and it's smoother. And the nerve endings that are there are closer to the surface, right,
It's
on
more
the head
sensitive.
penis. So it's more sensitive. And so, yes, that is a great advantage to foreskin restoration. It just looks nicer. It doesn't look rough and gray or dull the way it
Yeah.
would foreskin if it was constantly exposed. Now it's protected from any kind of abrasion from underwear so that it can soften out and like I said, thin out and become more sensitive. The mechanics are better as well because of that rolling motion of the foreskin. Just mechanically, it's so much easier to stimulate oneself or the partner with the foreskin.
I'm sold. You know what? I'm restoring back. It's going to happen. My kids are in school now all day long. I'm going to wear my tugger. I'm coming back, like it is a crazy thing to think that you have to restore your foreskin on your penis in this day and age. It's amazing that men have done this. And I can't even imagine going to Home Depot and being like, all right, this is the project I'm working on. I need some pipes. I'm trying to pull my skin on my penis, and the guy's like, all right, let me see your sketch. Like I've done that with plumbing and stuff. This is what I'm trying to do. I got to try that one day. Just going, okay, this is what I'm trying to build,
Yeah. O-rings, latex tubing, PVC pipe, clips. You get it all at Home Depot.
Yeah. I could just imagine the guy at Home Depot's face. What are you trying to do? What? Oh man, I think you got to go to plumbing. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
So good. Norm, it has been just a fantastic conversation with you. I just appreciate the work that you've done and the knowledge that you're sharing with us today. I really, I think that you're just part of an amazing cause. I love all the work that you've done. And thank you so much for your time and your knowledge.
Thank you. I just want to mention our website is www.NOCIRCofmi, that's NOCIRC of MI, Michigan.org. And be happy to connect you to any local groups if you're outside of Michigan and send you links with additional information. You can also find us on Facebook at NOCIRC of Michigan.
Perfect. Norm, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll be in touch more. I'll share this out to as many people as I can.
Thank you for having me, Jay.
Norm is awesome. What a great interview. I had so much fun with that interview. I had so much fun going through it again and editing it, but I did promise you a gift. So if you go to zendadmethod.com and you put in dad gift, that's the coupon code. One word, dad gift, the book will come up for free. And it's a quick read that it's just going to help you be an intentional father at bedtime. It's a perfect time. You get all these opportunities to connect with your kid. And there's a framework in there that kind of takes you how to get your kid's energy down, how to chill them out, how to connect with them, how to make everybody feel supported and heard during bedtime. It's just the common denominator between all fathers. And I wanted something to give dads to just help them start on their journey of being an intentional father. So it's my gift to you for enjoying this podcast. But let's just talk about this podcast for a second. Didn't it blow your mind, some of the stuff in there? Like the bloodstained men? Like, wow, that is so impactful to be out there protesting with a bloody crotch. That's I gotta say, that's a ballsy move, right? But the restoring of the foreskin, that's an actual thing that you can do. I'm actually in the process of it. I'm about halfway through, I'd say. I've got 2 skin, right? And it's amazing that the work that Norm has done for the last 28 plus years. What an incredible guy. What a compassionate person that he's done this for children all over North America, all over the world. So, I mean, if you do want to send donations to him, go to look him up, NOCIRC of Michigan. You've got the website already there, but you can send him donations. You can just send him an email and just say, you know what, I'm really happy for the work that you've done. What a great person to support. So I want to thank you for listening to the show, for tuning in, for enjoying what we've got. We always love your feedback. We appreciate when you subscribe to us. Check out zendadmethod.com. Connect with us. Share your comments. Reach out. We would love to hear from you. So thanks, and jump into the next podcast. Jump into the next show and see what we got to say. Thanks.